Hey y'all, welcome back to my page. It's your girl Miss Awaken again. And I'm here really quick to give you a few moments of my time, and hopefully if you're willing to spare yours, we can have a conversation today. I want to be able to share something with you, and I don't want to explain myself, but I do want to explain this. There are a lot of things in this world that people simply don't understand about you. And because they don't understand you, instead of them receiving you to try to figure out what it is about you, I understand people don't have time to figure out other people, but it surely don't mean to switch up that energy to a place of hate, to a feeling or an emotion to come up against someone and cast on the spirit of illegitimacy. See, a woman of God once said, a wise woman once said, that misinformation will allow us to abuse what we don't understand. And if we don't get to a place of understanding people, and even if we can't understand people, at least receive them until we do get to a place of understanding. Sometimes it takes to ask questions. But even if we don't have the capacity to do any of those things, just leave it to them. Let that be their thing, right? But some people don't want to do that with you. They rather cast on the spirit of legitimacy because they don't want to understand it. And since they don't want to understand it, you must be so ambiguous to where now you're crazy and you're everything under the sun but a child of God. There's this thing that I do as a motivational speaker, as a minister, as a person that has enrolled themselves in God's training program. You understand? When man don't want to train you, don't mean you can't turn to God. Does that make sense? When you're not cultivated by man, does not mean Holy Spirit cannot cultivate you. So where you can find resolve, you can find refuge, you can find peace in the gospel. Does that make sense? And so you start to be so resolved in yourself and okay with where you are because you know you're going down the right path, even if it means you're the only one that understands it. All you know is this is my niche, this is where I need to be, this is what's going to get me to my promised land, and this is my destiny. This is what's going to get me to a higher place of ascension. Everybody ascends in a certain way and in a different form. I call this thing the portal of understanding, or in other words, what I mostly like to use, the prophetic portal. Some people consider this as spookology. Some people think that this is scary, all because they don't understand it. And you know what? I can't consider myself responsible for that. I can't be concerned with that, because then you'll be offended by other people's offense. And you can't be offended by other people being offended, right? That means, because then that means you minimize your own merit of your own value and your own worth. And you forget the whole purpose of why you're supposed to do what you're supposed to do. Even if you don't know why you're supposed to do it, all you know is this is the task. This is the assignment, okay? This is what you have been instructed to accomplish, complete, master, fulfill, and fully operate in. Without man's permission, only God's. The prophetic portal is that median magnetic field that helps you get into a place of understanding between the natural and the spiritual, between the things that are temporal and the things that are eternal. You see, 2 Corinthians 4th chapter and the 18th verse says, For we look not at the things which are seen, but at the things which are not seen. For the things which are seen are temporal, and the things which are not seen are eternal. We understand that a day in heaven equals 1,000 years on earth. If I'm not mistaken, I believe 1,440 minutes, I believe that makes 24 hours in a day. That only makes 1 minute in heaven when you do the calculation. And 365,000 days on earth makes 1 day in heaven. Because if 1,000 years in earth makes one day in heaven, that means 365 days in a year, 365 times 1,000, 365,000 days. You understand? So we got all this time on earth to get it right and understand all of these spirits that have been already managed and fulfilled and understood and in its full authority, in its full power in the spirit realm. And it's some spirits that we are yet to encounter. It's some spirits that are already encountered. And it's some spirits we're already encountering. We can't understand how these things happen if we don't understand the cycles of life. In Ecclesiastes, the first chapter, starting at the 9th verse says, the thing that hath been, it is that which shall be. In other words, what has been will be. And that which is done is that which shall be done. That means what has been done will be done in the future. And there is no new thing under the sun. That means there's nothing new under the sun. Everything that has been will be. Everything that has been done will be done. And then whatever's done now will be done again. And then done again. And then done again. Now, when we go further down, we're going to skip 10 and go to 11. There is no remembrance of former things, neither shall there be any remembrance of things that are to come with those that shall come after. That means whatever already happened before in today's generation and age, we're not going to remember it now. That's why there's people that's born in Generation Alpha and Generation Z. They don't know who Little Richard is. You understand? They don't know anything about Detroit, Michigan, how that's the hometown of Motown Records. They don't know that, right? But it does not mean that this spirit has not already been managed in the spirit realm from 1500 AD. How do we know that? Because it was a former thing that we have no remembrance of because no one passed it down. And if somebody did, it becomes no longer history, it's now a myth. Anyway, neither shall there be any remembrance of things that are to come with those that shall come after, which means there's going to be a never-ending cycle of all of these managing spirits that's already been completed to the end of its order in the way of the spirit realm because of how fast-paced the natural realm has to move. You understand? 1,440 minutes on earth is 1 minute in heaven. 365,000 days on earth is 1 day in heaven. You understand? And so since the temporal is a lot more faster because it's all temporary, the things that are eternal has already been managed. Any negative, dark, spiritual, divine entity in the spirit realm, it's already been managed and completed. But we don't know that because we haven't encountered it yet in our mere selves. Our lifespan is only 65 to 70 years old, and some of us don't make it that long. The longest I've ever known anybody to be alive was 123. And we talking about 365,000 days as 1 day. And you understand? But we have to, and we encounter all of these spirits throughout the entirety of our lives. You don't think there were scammers in the biblical times? There were. You don't think there were python spirits in the biblical times? There were. And even when they were in the biblical times, it wasn't remembered in the medieval times. And it didn't, what happened in the medieval times wasn't remembered when the Vietnam War came around, or World War II, World War I, the Holocaust, Desert Storm, IEIF. You understand? Post 9/11. We don't remember because it's not being passed down. It's more so thought of as a myth. because it's ancient history, right? Unless somebody really does their job by putting in the work because they made it their life. That's the only way we get that information. And then you got some people that want to put their own little spin on it to juice it up. So they dilute the potency of the history. And then we still get lied to. That also has happened in the past. It's happening now, and it's going to happen in the future. Things being invented. It happened in the past, it's happening now, it's going to happen in the future. The same spirit manages it. The spirit of invention is going to happen in a different way and in a different light. That's why we stay at awe. But when you realize, okay, the spirit of invention is always going to take place. It's always going to be manifested. It's always going to show itself in a different formality. Evil is going to always be here. It's going to always take place. It's always going to show itself in a different formality. But we have to understand evil when we see it. We can't be so engrossed with the fact that there's a platform for it. This prophetic portal, this portal of understanding that helps us understand the things between the natural and the spiritual, there are people in this world that has been called to give us those teachings. And because some people don't understand it, they want to reject it because they have not gotten to a place of knowing, I need this. But maybe that's an opportunity for us to start realizing, maybe that's for my way to say or believe and start to get into this place of knowing I'm a babe in the spirit more than I thought. Right? There's always opportunity for rooms of growth. You always want to search to be ever changing and ever evolving. Acclimation, right? Being ever changing and ever evolving and not wavering from bettering yourself every opportunity we get. The day you think you know everything is the day you know nothing at all because you put a cap on your ascension. And then we end up start walking the world thinking we know everything. And as soon as we come across somebody that knows more than us, what we do, we get insecure. We want to tear them down. Rather than coming to them and believing, what shall I do to get saved? It's like you go inside of a club or you go inside of a restaurant or you go inside of a mall and you see a whole bunch of women with their halfway dressed selves showing all of their skin, all their cleavages, all their thighs and say like whatever, not trying to be funny. But you walk up in that same place, totally covered, dressing modestly, and like a lady. And you walk in there as pretty as can be, if not prettier than them. And you turning more heads, and they looking at you like you made a bad life decision. Instead of them looking at you, taking notes, they looking at you and whispering amongst themselves with hate. That's like someone driving in a hoopty and happen to be at a stoplight right next to someone driving a Rolls Royce and looking with them with the upside down look, like they don't need something that they have. If I don't have something that you have, I'm going to come to you and say, how can I get that? Or can you teach me how to get that? I'm not going to tear you down, and I'm not necessarily going to build you up either, but I'm surely going to make sure I don't get what you have, but I at least want to learn what you know. Because you have something I don't. And instead of people coming to us and saying, what shall I do to get saved? They're more so thinking, what shall I do to get that in the headlock? What must I do to get that one in the full Nelson? What must I do to tear this person down rather than lift their spirits? What shall I do to make them feel like they're lesser than, rather than making sure I learn as much as I can from them? Because for everything, there is a time and a place. Ecclesiastes, once again, chapter 3, verse 1. To everything, there is a season and a time to every purpose under the heaven. Okay? A time to be born and a time to die. A time to plant, a time to pluck up that which is planted. Time to kill and a time to heal, a time to break down and a time to build up, a time to weep and a time to laugh, a time to mourn and a time to dance, a time to cast away stones and a time to gather stones together, a time to embrace and a time to refrain from embracing. So don't get offended or don't try to allow someone to make you feel bad because they're offended, because you simply don't want to be touched, because some people do want to touch you because you're more powerful than them and they want to snatch virtue from you. That's one of the many ways that you know you're dealing with a python spirit, when they always want to pierce your boundaries, that you know is going to snatch virtue from you. A time to get and a time to lose, a time to keep and a time to cast away, a time to rend and a time to sow, a time to keep silence and a time to speak, a time to love and a time to hate, a time of war and a time of peace. What profit hath he worketh in that wherein he laboreth? Okay, it's asking, what can someone gain, okay, when he works and labors? That means you can work without laboring. Laboring hurts. Work allows you to harvest a fruit. You can't harvest a fruit from labor. You harvest a fruit from work. You understand? You have to know the difference between whether you're laboring or you're working. And sometimes when you're laboring, you will not reap a harvest because laboring snatches virtue as well. Laboring blinds you of your purpose. Laboring will have you chasing something rather remaining humble while you're working and letting something come to you. You understand? So what profit hath he that worketh in that wherein he laboreth? So if you're working and you're laboring, that means if you're working too hard and you're looking for something to manifest and you're not wise about the time and the season to know every purpose to do everything that was just mentioned, a time to build up and a time to tear down, a time for war and a time for peace, okay? A time to hate and a time to love. You understand? A time to plant and a time to pluck, which has been planted. If we don't have wisdom behind these things, we will never be able to get in ourselves in this portal of understanding. This is where wisdom resides. So all of this is what the teacher in the book of Ecclesiastes was explaining. This is all just chasing after the wind. It's still vanity because we're going for something that we're never going to seek an ultimate answer for. We're always going to search for more. The word says that the poor will remain oppressed and the rich will never be satisfied, because this is also too chasing after a wind. So I hope that blessed you as much as pondering all of those things blesses me. Let's remain ever changing, ever evolving out there. Let's learn how to acclimate and not judge people for knowing what we don't know. Let's not be concerned about who's experienced and what, and who's not experienced what, because what we don't understand. Just because somebody was on the throne first, don't mean they got on that throne right. So I hope that blessed you as much as pondering on those things blesses me. I love every single one of you. God bless you and God keep you.